Photography Daily.
It's really important to be able to run yourself as a business as much as a sort of photographer, especially as a freelancer. You know, I'm not a staff photographer where I'm just like sent assignments, right, go out, go and do that. I've got to pitch myself.
The voice of Finn Beals, who has made shooting documentary work for commercial clients, is living the dream actually, in the great outdoors predominantly. But it all started with advice and photographic inspiration and mentoring from his grandfather.
He gave me this lesson in sort of the dirty foreground, which is a technique I still use in my work today. It's just like obscuring a bit of the frame with something in the foreground.
We talk about how the Hay Festival of Literature and Art, described by Bill Clinton as the Woodstock of the mind, became a serendipitous, career-enhancing opportunity.
The director of that festival, I was working on their website at the time, and he saw some of the photo work that I was doing, and he said, would you like to shoot the festival for us? And I was like, yeah, totally.
We chat about Finn's relationship with Instagram.
I think it has probably influenced the way I approach work from a sort of storytelling perspective. I mean, I shoot a lot of different types of photography, lifestyle, travel, commercial work.
Finn Beals is known for his cinematic approach to making photo stories.
I use a sort of like filmic approach in that sense, medium shots, close-ups, long shots, and then stitch them all together in the edit to tell a story. So you as the viewer, you almost like watching a movie, but it's still photographed.
Photography, that's great enabler, as it's been called by so many guests.
Absolutely ridiculous, pulling 5 Gs in the turn. So as you travel up, you're literally pressed against the back of your seat and your camera's like pressed up against your chest.
We talk about connection.
I love the Hasselblad because you don't hide your face with a Hasselblad. You kind of like looking down at the image, and then you can sort of like talk to who you're taking a picture of.
Some thoughts from Finn Beals about doing what you love.
You need to shoot from the heart to make work that connects with your audience. If you're not feeling it, if it's not what drives you, then I don't think it will work.
And talking of feeling, a reminder to take time to feel.
Close that bloody app down and just reconnect with your surroundings, and you'll be amazed at what sort of comes to mind. It's just there's a sort of like a value in doing nothing and stepping back a little bit.
Stories of life told by photographers, and today that photographer is Finn Beals.
A lot of people think they need the latest bit of kit to make photographs, but that's not the case. You can shoot fantastic photographs with ancient bits of kit, like Hasselblads that are sort of decades old.
Patron of the day today is Frank Woodward, based out of East Tennessee. I'll link to his website, of course, as ever in the show notes. Mountain, sea, sky, flowers, trees, rivers, birds. It's very apposite when you consider who I'm speaking to today on the show. Frank certainly studies life, as you'll see when you go to his site. You'll know if I were in an exhibition, the seascapes with the cotton wool sea movements would have me lingering longer. I love those kinds of shots, and it's something about, the serenity of that glues me to the spot. And there's some perfect examples in your mountain, sea and sky collection, Frank. And your birds in flight photographs are, I'm going to use the word again, studies of what I think are different breeds of hummingbirds. Correct me if I'm wrong. But more than that, they're studies of patience, all of them. Top of the game photographs. And thank you for your steadfast support as a patron. We're also supported by our friends at mpb.com, the people and website to go to if you want to buy, sell or trade used camera gear safely in the US, the UK or Europe. Protected by guarantee when you buy, paying out quickly when you sell. And right now it's MPB's Photo and Video Kit Hall of Fame 2021, with voting ending very soon, 6th of August. A committee of world-renowned photographers, journalists and influencers have selected nominees in 5 categories: classic, game changer, iconic, road tested and trendsetter. And now it's time for you to vote on the best photo and video kit of the digital age. Go to mpb.com and their blog and you'll see how to vote in there. I'll link to it, of course, on the show page today. Finn Beals was one of the photographers who helped nominate Kit for this list, and we'll talk a little about his feelings about Kit at the end of today's show. He has the kind of documentary photographic life of dreams, I think, and this wondrous, inquiring eye wherever he is in the world. And on his website, you can see that within the tab marked 72 hours in ... Delving further into his site is a potent reminder that there's a story in everything we do, and everywhere we go. And that even photographers hired by some of the biggest brands on the planet like to go and find their personal stories every once in a while. Always have your camera with you screams at me as I look through that and his Instagram feed. I'd like you to meet Finn Beals. Finn, you've chosen to live in one of the nicest places in the UK, I think, in the Welsh Black Mountains, which is perfect for the landscapes that you like to work in.
I do like it here.
Yeah.
I mean, I was born here, so I left, but then found it very hard not to come back. And that's happened with a lot of my friends that grew up around me. We've all sort of like retreated back to the hills, especially during this pandemic. It's a nice place to be.
Yeah, I saw the pandemic pictures. You've got this wonderful old Land Rover.
Hector.
It's got a name. Yeah, I was going to.
He's got a name. Yeah.
You got to have a name for an old car, haven't you?
You need a name, and he's called Hector because like the brakes don't always work, so you cry "oh heck" when you're going careering down a hill, one of these Black Mountains.
A farmer once said to me, "Don't ever buy." When I bought a Land Rover, he said, "Don't ever buy a Land Rover." And I thought, Nigel, you're a farmer, surely. He said, and I looked around his yard, and he had nothing like it. And he said, "Land Rovers are great." He said, "But they'll invariably, the older ones, let you down, but they will always get you home."
It's true, and you can get yourself home with the sort of bare minimum of tools. They are really basic, but they do go wrong all the time. I would call it a constant project. I do like a project, and so that car is a constant project.
Have you become a better mechanic since having a Land Rover? I know I learned a few things.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, completely. And that was kind of like part of buying it, actually.
Yeah.
You like get under the hood and you can see everything. These modern cars, everything's hidden.
Well, yeah, and there's no such thing as a computer inside it, is there?
No, that's right. No. And they also photograph fantastically well, especially in this landscape. Yeah. They're just sort of fitting,
I bet the kids love it.
Yeah, my son is 13 and he has been driving it since he was 10 years old. So, and it's manual and it's not easy to drive, but he's got his eye on it. It's his first car, actually.
Has he? Well, there's no such thing as power steering or anything in there. So
no power steering, and you can't really get beyond sort of 35, 40 miles an hour in it, so it's probably fairly safe first car.
Have you always been an outdoorsy person? I'm imagining you probably have been.
Yeah, I mean, living out in the sticks, especially, when I was growing up in sort of like 80s, there's not a lot going on out here, so you have to make your own fun. Yeah. And, it's no sort of like parks to go to or like cinemas and stuff. So, the great outdoors is the playground. So, yeah, lots of camping, hiking, sailing, horse riding, that sort of thing.
That wasn't what made the photography interest come alive. It was Grandad, wasn't it? I've spoken to a couple of photographers recently, Tim Wallace being one, who blames the whole thing on his granddad. Yeah, well, it's the same with me. I listened to that Tim episode this morning, actually, and that connected. My grandfather was a keen amateur, and my first lesson in sort of composition with him, and I was talking to my mum about it yesterday, actually. He gave me this lesson in sort of the dirty foreground, which is a technique I still use in my work today. It's just like obscuring a bit of the frame with something in the foreground to create that depth of field, as though you're peering in on a scene. And he was just using it with a tree and the holiday cottage that we were staying in on holiday that summer. Dirty foreground. I love it, because I've always thought of that as like, film animation. When you used to see the proper old film animation where it built up in layers. Yeah. Tree always at the front. Dirty foreground. I love that. Yeah, the dirty foreground. Yeah, it just gives that sort of feeling of you get a privileged view on the scene that's happening. It's like you're almost like hiding in the bushes or something. Yeah. So it gives the viewer a feeling. And you've started your son early on the trail as well, haven't you? I read that you gave him a camera age 2. Surely one of those VTech ones, probably not one of your beloved 5Ds. Oh, I don't know. My profile picture on my Instagram was shot by him on a 5D. No way. In Iceland. So yeah, I'm quite proud of that picture that he took. But yeah, he also flies the drone and stuff. So out the back of the Land Rover when we're shooting that. So initially you founded a design agency with a bunch of friends, didn't you? And I guess was that where the photography started to take off as well, because it was all sort of melded, wasn't it? Yeah, certainly. I mean, I was using photography in that design firm and commissioning photographers to shoot work for our clients. And I always felt I was at the mercy of the photographer, and I have a very strong aesthetic, and I knew what I was dealing with the client in terms of like developing their websites or their sort of graphic campaigns. So I just sort of picked up a camera to sort of complement the design work that I was making for clients, because I kind of knew what I wanted, but relaying that to a photographer, it didn't always sort of
work, for my vision. So I started shooting for my design clients.
So funny enough, I mentioned this since you mentioned him, Tim, as well. I asked him if he was a bit of a perfectionist, because I got this idea about him, and I guess in some respects you are as well.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I mean, when you're working in the sort of graphics world, you're not just using like straight pictures to put on a website. I would like to take photographs of details or textures that I would underlay. It's a bit like that layering thing we were talking about a second ago. You put textures underneath text, or if I was going to run an ad line across a photograph, I needed copy space. So I'd need to frame accordingly. So, like frame right. So the subject would be on the right-hand side of the frame, and I'd have like blank sky or, a clean background that I could lay my text over. And you can brief that to an extent to a photographer, but you can't micromanage someone, because then you could destroy their vision, their way of working. So I think it just was more efficient within the design firm for me to start shooting, because I knew exactly what I needed to slot it into my design work.
I guess the boot's on the other foot now, though, isn't it? Because now you're working to the designers. But having had that thorough design background probably helps you.
Absolutely. And those are the questions that I would ask in sort of creative calls, or when I'm working with art directors on set. It's just like, how are these pictures going to be used? Which context are they going to be used? And I can shoot with the designer's eye. And I think that has definitely paid dividends, and it become more of an asset to the design firm then.
So when did it start changing then? When did you get to the stage where you're doing less and less design and more photography? What was that changeover point?
Time-wise, probably 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah.
Probably with the rise of platforms like Instagram, because I'd start publishing some of my client work on those, and then I picked up work via that.
And we've been talking much about Instagram as a platform of late, and the changes they're making, etc. Obviously, it's been quite important to you and your journey, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's probably influenced the way I approach work from a sort of storytelling perspective. I mean, I shoot a lot of different types of photography, lifestyle, travel, commercial work. And invariably, there's a sort of social aspect of each job, where they need content to put out across their own channels, or indeed if they want to work with me via mine. So I tend to approach briefs with that in mind. So, we might have our hero images that are going on a billboard or something, but then we need to shoot other content where we can take a product and incorporate that into a story for it to be released across Instagram, because I feel like pure product photography doesn't really work well on that platform. It doesn't engage well. If you can drop a product into a wider context, a story, then people can sort of associate themselves with the lifestyle that product is associated with, if that makes sense.
It does. And it's quite interesting because you were an early adopter of Instagram, and your work on the platform has built and it's maintained this steady, strong following. And your lifestyle, where you live, Finn, the outdoors life that you lead in your picture making, means that you are of interest to brands. So you have this double-edged relationship with social media where you're shooting work for brands, and then brands are coming to you to be a part of your brand, which for many photographers, most I would argue, is a reasonably unique position. Is this something you promote?
They do obviously have a big audience on there.
Yeah, you do.
Over 500,000 followers on Instagram. Yeah. But I'm quite sort of picky, choosy in terms of who I work with via my own channels, because I don't view it as an ad channel in that sense. I really don't view myself as an influencer, albeit I have influence because lots of people follow my work, but I don't like to sort of shove that sort of stuff down people's throats. So if a brief comes in that aligns with the lifestyle that I like to lead and the work that I like to make, and I think that my audience would appreciate it, and I can build a story around a product and entertain people in the way that old school advertising used to. I love those old Guinness adverts, you used to watch on TV with White Horse and the Circus and stuff.
God, yeah.
And if I can sort of work in that sense in a creative way and think my audience will appreciate it, then I will accept work across my channel.
So you predominantly shoot documentary work, which I think for many photographers is living the dream status. And not just because it takes you around the world shooting the stories that you would like, but it provides you freedom to shoot as you would like, really, as well, Finn. You are the sort of 10-year overnight success. is the famous cliche in this kind of business, isn't it?
Yeah, and you say 10-year overnight success, but I was shooting work for 8 years before that for like client work within the agency that didn't, I wasn't necessarily being commissioned for my photographic work. And all that work within the design firm has led into my photography. A lot of the work using color or pitching or working with clients, responding creatively to a commercial brief, they're all transferable skills to photography. And I think it's really important to be able to run yourself as a business as much as a sort of photographer, especially as a freelancer. I'm not a staff photographer where I'm just like sent assignments, right, go out, go and do that. I've got to pitch myself as much as run this sort of account side of the business. So it's like multifaceted working as a photographer. But in terms of the journey, I guess my first predominantly photographic assignments were via the Hay Festival, which is a big festival that takes place in our town of Hay on Wye. And the director of that festival, I was working on their website at the time, and he saw some of the photo work that I was doing, and he said, "Would you like to shoot the festival for us?" And I was like, "Yeah, totally." And that was a really nice brief to get, because it was all sorts of different types of photography, from portraiture of authors to documentary, comedy, lifestyle. And when the festival went overseas, I traveled with them. And so then I could start incorporating travel work. And when the festival moved overseas, the actual stuff on site didn't really look much different from the stuff that was happening in Wales. So I started shooting, I'd go out into the streets in like early morning and shoot street scenes. And then I'd drop those street scenes into the essays that I was making, from say Colombia or Mexico. And so you could differentiate between the different festivals. You could drop in the portraiture of the authors, but then you could drop in a street scene of like early morning Cartagena in Colombia. And then it gave the essay a sense of place and a story.
So do you credit the Hay Festival really for being the launch pad for all these amazing clients subsequently that you've worked with?
I'd say that they gave me great creative freedom in terms of experimenting with my photography, and they allowed me to sort of like run with it. And that was a sort of gift, really, because it was like paid work, but they trusted me to sort of express myself however I wanted. In terms of like client lists, signing with my photo agent obviously helped with that. They then pitch me into clients that I wouldn't necessarily be able to reach as like a little jobbing photographer, like knocking on the door of Amiga and saying, "Hey, can I shoot your latest watch campaign?" That doesn't really, you can do it. I thought I like the way that Tim was talking this morning on his episode about farming and dropping seeds with clients, And I do that. I pitch clients, but I mean, it's probably a better place now with a big following and a decent portfolio behind me. I think that's very important to be able to get yourself noticed.
Yeah, and clients will recognize you for your style and know you and hire you accordingly, won't they? Yeah,
completely. I mean, they can look at your past work and trust you to deliver, really, because they can if they can see their products within your work. It's your CV, really, isn't it? I don't have a CV. I'm doing some mentorship work at the moment with a young photographer down in Cornwall, and as part of it's grant funded, and so when we were going through the sort of like the grant funding for him, they asked me for my CV, and I was just like, I don't have a CV. Just look at my portfolio. I'm a photographer. I'm not not applying for an office job here. So
on the Breitling job, by the way, what was it like flying in the formation team? That looked excellent fun.
Yeah, it was pretty epic. Yeah, and it was a ridiculous commission. So yeah, we were flying in formation. I think there's eight jets flying in formation, looping the loop over the skies of Cognac. Absolutely ridiculous. Pulling 5 Gs in the turn. So as you travel up, you're literally pressed against the back of your seat, and your camera's like pressed up against your chest. But as you turn, as you hit the sort of top of the loop and you invert, you become not weightless, but the gravity effect isn't as pronounced. So I could like rattle off a few shots, and then before you drop down, and then you're thrown back into your seat again.
So during the moments of going up and going down, there was no way you could really work with a camera.
Well, I don't know. I could rattle off a few frames, It was ridiculous. I had to argue pretty hard to get my camera in that cockpit, actually, because it's a bit of a risk if it comes loose and starts flying around. It takes your pilot out. But we had it really strapped down, and it was nice and safe.
Are they really that close? I mean, it looked pretty close in the pictures that I saw of yours.
Oh, yeah, meters. Wow. I mean, it was ridiculous. The skill of those guys is just incredible. They all come. A lot of them come from military backgrounds.
Yeah.
and then trained very, very hard. But I was full of anxiety building into that shoot. But on the morning I woke up, I was absolutely stoked. I couldn't wait to get in there. I loved it. I really did.
You have what is described as a cinematic style, Finn. What does that mean?
It can mean a few things. I'd probably grading the color grade that I wrap over the top of my pictures, I would say could be classed as cinematic.
Yeah. So a lot of this then is about the feel, the look, the aesthetics.
I saw a great exhibition by Pete Williams, who was a jazz photographer recently, and I was talking to him afterwards, and he was talking about printing and the skill of printing. And I think that is lost on a lot of photographers that are coming through today, because no one really prints their own work anymore. And he said that was like half of his, art was his ability to print work in the way that he wanted it to be viewed. And I think the way that we consume a photograph is dictated by how it kind of looks. And if you just like shoot a picture from a digital camera today and just put it online, it looks no real difference color-wise than any other picture that just comes straight out of the camera. So, in the way that Pete was talking about his ability to print, my ability to grade pictures, to give it a color tone, or, working with contrast and like texture and film grain stuff is half the battle, if that makes sense. It's half the battle of making pictures today is your ability to work with them after they come out of the camera and sort of develop your style. But before that, obviously, becomes composition and angles and shooting at different focal lengths. And that's the way I approach a job. I'll shoot using a variety of different prime lenses, fixed focal lengths that I know work together, and photograph using the techniques like dirty foreground or getting in close. I use a sort of like a filmic approach in that sense, medium shots, close-ups, long shots, and then stitch them all together in the edit to tell a story. So you as the viewer, you almost like watching a movie, but it's still photographed.
Because you do, you do stay fairly faithful to a lineup, don't you? 24, 35, 50, 85. That seems to be a staple.
Yeah, that's my sort of like my fixed bag.
Back with Finn Beals in a moment. Until October 3rd this year, we're proud to partner a photographic outdoor exhibition in the south of England called Photo Swindon, featuring 3 international photographers: Martin Parr, Jason Florio and Sanne de Wilde. It's free, and each photographer has their time in various parks and open spaces of Swindon in England to show a story, one at a time. And right now it's the turn of Martin Parr. The images are displayed as a touring exhibition across 3 of Swindon's town parks. Go to @PhotoSwindon on Twitter, Facebook or Instagram for news, behind-the-scenes pictures, stories and latest news. So wherever you are in the world, even if you can't see it in person, you can still experience this outdoor exhibition curated by doc photographer Jennifer Berry, featuring a collection of works with a shared title, In Sync, Natures of Togetherness, reflecting on a world coming together again after our isolation. Right, let's return to Finn Beals. What draws you to a picture, Finn? Whether you're on your travels or at home, what screams, "Stop the car! This is a moment"?
I don't know if I'm feeling it. I'm a big one for feels. If you can feel it, composition is obviously key.
Yeah.
Whether a photograph is 2-dimensional, so it's an X and a Y axis. So can you see a third dimension within that scene? Or can you move yourself to create that third dimension so that when you're viewing it in 2-dimension, you're sort of looking into the frame. You're creating that Y-axis, if you know what I mean.
And just to go back to Hey, actually, and your passion for shooting for festivals and events like this and travel. It's been a tricky time for that, really, hasn't it? 18 months to say the least. And a lot of your work is involved in travel.
Yeah.
What have you been doing?
What have I been doing? Writing. So I published 2 books during the pandemic, one of which became sort of an instant bestseller, which was very heartening. And that's called the Photography Storytelling Workshop.
I saw that one, yeah.
That's sort of like a how-to guide to be a photographer today, really, in the commercial sense. So I created an online version of the book like a video workshop with a great friend who lives in Montana called Alex Stroll. And that's 6 hours of a camera following me shooting a commercial job, how I prepare for it, how I might pitch for it, how I shoot it. It's involving a Land Rover actually, and how I like post all the post-production that goes into it and then like delivering it to the client. And a publisher had seen that online and asked if I'd like to turn it into a book. And, you know, serendipitous timing, really, it just perfectly aligned with the pandemic. So, you know, writing a book is a lot of work, I have to say. A lot, you know, it's a lot more involved long term than it is shooting a job, I think. So it really gave me the perfect time out from my shooting work to sit down and brain dump that onto the page. Anyway, that was very successful. So then they came back and asked me to do another book. So that publishes in October, and that is called Let's Get Lost. And that has seen me interview 20 other really incredible photographers from all around the world and asking them how they shoot and where they like to shoot and what, you know, a bit like you asking me about my work. I did the same sort of thing with them, but it's in the written form and accompanied by their photographs. There's all sorts of people in there, like a guy called Ruben Wu, he's become very famous for shooting with a drone with a light on. Right. So instead of shooting from the drone, he shoots from the land and takes the drone into these incredible landscapes and lights them at night. So he's shooting long exposures, and so he's lighting up different aspects of the landscape with the drone, which has really flipped the whole sort of drone photography thing on its head. Yeah. And he's really worth checking out. A guy called Chris Burkhardt, big surf photographer in West Coast. I know of him. And it was his travels to, his piece is all about traveling to the outer remotes of Russia in search of the perfect wave.
Yes. He isn't he the guy that crashes up on those, because it's not the easiest place in the world to surf, is it?
No, not at all. He really likes he likes shooting cold water surfing. So he made a film called Under the Arctic Sky that was quite big a few years ago. But, you know, all those sorts of journeys that he makes are crazy adventures. And I think he ended up in prison for a day or something because he got his visa one date wrong for the Russian authorities. He details it in the book.
I look forward to reading that. Did you research and go find the photographers that you wanted for that?
Yeah. The publisher gave me complete free rein. So it was sort of people that I'd followed for a long time or wanted to find out about the stories they made. There's a guy called Tim Allen, he's famous for shooting the BBC Human Planet series. He made some great work before that, and one of them was shooting this ancient Bulgarian monument, Soviet monument, and it looks like a Bond layer, and he photographed it in a depths of the winter, but it was pre-drones, so he wanted an aerial shot of it, so he found a local hang glider, and he was hang gliding over the top of this incredible monument through these storm clouds, frostbitten fingers, just to get the shot. I kind of loved all that and finding out about all these stories, and you know, lots of people had some downtime lots of photographers had downtime during the pandemic, and it was just nice talking to them and connecting. And
talking of as you were mentioning with the photographer there getting in trouble with the Russian authorities, you have to keep your wits about you. And I did read one story about you in a particular moment when you trained your 70 to 200 on the wrong dance at a rock concert in Mexico.
Tell us
about that.
That was the festival that they were operating in Mexico, in Jalapa, and it was a bit sketchy because the local cartel, operate in that area, and I'd been told we went to sort of the end of festival concert, and I took my very big 7200 to reach the stage and stuff. And one of my colleagues that was working with me was just put the lens down. It's cartel over there, and they don't like photographers, the cartel.
No, not really.
No. And they take them away and do nasty things to them. So it was just a little bit sketchy. I was young. So I do that now, I don't know.
As a very accomplished documentarian, then you've never been tempted by the wild side of undercover, then, Finn, or hard-hitting photojournalism in I don't know, say a conflict zone.
No, I'm a peace-loving guy. Do you know what I mean? I don't. It doesn't really turn me on. I mean, it's very important work to do, of course, but it's not this type of work that I'm interested in. You need to shoot from the heart to make work that connects with your audience. If you're not feeling it, if it's not what drives you, then I don't think it will it will work. And some people love that, but it's dangerous work. And I've got 2 kids, and I kind of let over that sort of stuff. But then saying that, I will get in a jet fighter and loop the loop, or climb an erupting volcano at sunset and photograph that. So I don't know. I don't like human conflict, but I'm very inspired by sort of the earth and natural dangers, I guess.
Degrees of danger, Finn. Degrees of danger.
Yeah, degrees of danger. Volcanoes are really bloody dangerous. And
I saw your pictures. I mean, you've got to have your wits about you for that, because they do different things when you're not expecting it. Yeah,
you cannot talk your way out of that. You can't mess around with when the earth is spewing sort of thousands of degrees of lava in your direction. So yeah, it needs a lot of preparation.
Do you push the envelope for those? Let's get a bit closer.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you have to get the shot.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you leave it on the volcano, you kind of get one chance. But yeah, no, I talk about that in one of the chapters of my Let's Get Lost book, actually. Just shooting a volcano in Hawaii, and I just looked down. It was after dark, and I looked down, and I realised that I was standing on this sort of sheet of lava that had cooled, and effectively lava is glass. It's like a sheet of glass as it cools, and I could see the lava flowing underneath my feet.
Oh, my word.
And the sort of smell of burning rubber.
Somebody shoots in the manner that you do, where to me everything seems an adventure. Did you ever put the camera down when you're not working, as some photographers do, or is it always by your side? I did notice, for example, that you cite the iPhone as an important piece of photographic equipment.
Yeah, I think it is. And like I was saying about shooting from the heart, I shoot what inspires me, or if I'm feeling something. And obviously family and life in these hills are constant sort of adventure and escapades, and it's beautiful weather at the moment, so lots of wild swimming, and it's just really idyllic.
And I like the way that you can make a study out of almost seemingly anything, Finn. I really love the second-hand. I know there weren't a lot of pictures in there, but I really like the second-hand book study, Booktown.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And that sort of stuff. I mean, it shows you that, a lot of the time we talk about, there's nothing, I don't feel inspired today, I can't find anything, but you have that ability to find stuff.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's tricky in this world where we are bombarded by images via platforms like Instagram, and people are traveling all over the world and flying in jets or, climbing volcanoes, just to get really demoralized and go, okay, well, I haven't had that opportunity, so I can't make work like it. But you can make work wherever you are. It's just your approach. And sometimes if you are feeling like that, just close that bloody app down and just reconnect with your surroundings, and you'll be amazed at what sort of comes to mind. It's just there's a sort of a value in doing nothing and stepping back a little bit, and it's a kind of buzzword at the moment, isn't it? Staying in the moment, but reconnecting with your own space rather than sort of connecting with far off places through your phone.
And it helps to have a Land Rover called Hector as well, I think. But
that helps.
As the world reopens, as it will for us all, I believe that. What's the roadmap ahead for you now?
Yeah, the world is opening up, and jobs are starting to come in. I mean, we're in pre-production at the moment for a TV commercial that I'm directing. So that's filmic work. So I take a more sort of directorial role in that sense, working with a client, talking about their backstory, what they want to achieve through the film. So again, it's kind of like transferable skills in the way that the design work was to photography. The photography work that I do transfers quite nicely into film.
Yeah.
So I'm working with a great DOP on that. I'm, for my sins, writing or about to have another meeting with my publisher, because they want me to write a third book, which is quite a nice feeling.
Absolutely.
And another workshop with Alex in Montana.
Well, let's take a moment to talk about MPB's 2021 Photo and Video Kit Hall of Fame. 25 pieces of camera kit, 5 categories: game changer, classic, iconic, road tested, trendsetter. There's some kit in there that you've nominated. I did see the 35 1.4, which I know is one of your favourites. The 5D3 was in there. The 5D4 is in there, which is, of course, another piece of kit that you love to use. Did you put something into every single category there? Nominate?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. But obviously my Canon repertoire figured quite highly. But there's iconic ones, so I dropped in the Hasselblad and things like that. I do shoot with the Hasselblad, personal work, portraiture particularly. Actually, with that, I love the Hasselblad because you don't hide your face with a Hasselblad. You kind of like looking down at the image, and then you can sort of like talk to who you're taking a picture of. And I think with like a rangefinder or a DSLR, you hide your face with the camera, and eye contact is massive as a human being. So I really like the way that you can shoot and maintain eye contact with a Hasselblad.
How much emphasis do you place in kit, Finn?
I'm not like a massively gear heavy photographer, but reliability is huge. And I think that's why I nominated, and why I do shoot with those Canon 5D models. They're absolutely bomb-proof. I shoot in ridiculous environments, extreme environments, torrential rain on the side of like a searing volcano, whatever. They're really good in terms of battery life. They'll keep going all day. And I'm not precious with my kit. I really am not. I treat it like an electrician uses a screwdriver. If your camera's not out of your bag, you can miss a photograph. So I'm not precious in that respect, but I need it to work, because if it doesn't work, there's no pictures at the end of the shoot. So I value the sort of reliability and battery life that come with those models. But saying that, I've just replaced my 5D Mark IV with an R5, and I'm loving that. That's my first move into this sort of EVF territory.
So whoever buys your 5D4 then, are they receiving a piece of kit that's been well looked after, or hanging off your shoulder at the edge of a volcano?
I'll be pretty honest with my description of it. But, that's the thing. And that's what I quite like about MPB, actually. A lot of people think they need the latest bit of kit to make photographs, but that's not the case. You can shoot fantastic photographs with ancient bits of kit, like Hasselblads that are sort of, decades old. You don't need the latest kit. And I think that recyclability of cameras is really interesting. I sold my 5D Mark II years ago, and I warrant that's still being used today. So, yeah.
And my thanks to Finn Beals. And that's it for today. Keep sending your questions, feedback and photo stories to studio@photographydaily.show so that I can feature you in the mailbag edition, which is the Friday Photo Walk. On that note, remember you can also send in pictures from your own photo walks to appear on the episode's show page online, with links to your website or Instagram if you so wish. Friday, there is some rather important news about what's on the horizon for this show. And we're steaming quite quickly toward that horizon too, as all this starts in 2 weeks. I have a break next week while we prepare for that. In fact, I'm making a location photo walk as it happens, possibly 2. I'll tell you all about it on Friday. Music on the show from the incredible artslist.io, and I look forward to photographing with you, hearing from you and talking with you next time.
Photography Daily is a Loading Zone production.